boys.
Cheers.
It's so easy.
It's so easy, baby.
Some call the Kaiser blade, I call the sling blade. You got
That's so easy.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the It's So Easy podcast, episode number 1. I don't even know what camera I'm looking at right now, but I'll figure it out later.
Look at all of them.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
I'm going to assume this one's the main one here.
That's the main.
Being straight in the middle. Okay.
And that's it. That's all you need to know.
This
Give us your money.
This is awesome, guys.
Yeah, we finally made it happen. We talked about it, and we talked about it, and we were late, but we did it.
It almost didn't happen, but we made it happen.
We made it happen.
Well, we said we wanted to start rolling in January.
Yeah.
And
it is January.
It is January. It's like January, 4th? Is it 4th
We're-
already?
We're really not late, are we, Zach?
4th? No, we're like...
No, I'm never late.
God, this year's going by so quick.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it has.
Chris, you forgot to say it when Taylor did the intro.
Yeah. So, folks, welcome to the It's So Easy podcast, or It's So Easy, baby.
It's so easy.
Nice.
Funny stuff.
So, we're going to talk a lot of music and shit like that, and
Yeah.
we'll dive into it.
I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of stuff that's not music. There's going to be, hopefully, mostly stuff that is music. We don't know where we're going, but we're going to find out. You're going to find out with us.
Well, and for those who do not know who we are a band. But we'll get into all those details later. But we decided, hey, we figured we ought to make a podcast from musicians for musicians. I think the musical community, we'd be a lot tighter if we all had a lot of things in common, which I think we do. It's just we don't really get to get out there and talk to each other as much as we should. You know what I mean?
No, sir. No, there's a lot of kind of tensions I feel sometimes in the music world that doesn't get addressed because nobody ever sits down and talks to each other. There's a beginning line to a Chris LeDuc song that I always think of. It's like, sometimes I wonder if people sat in the same room, they'd have a lot more in common than they think. Yeah. Because music is not supposed to ever be a competition. I've always heard the term, the folks at the top collaborate and the folks at the bottom compete. So it's just a mindset change.
You just touched on a huge word, dude, compete. I am personally musically competitive.
Yeah.
It's what's kept me going sometimes, but it is a highly competitive sort of cutthroat environment out there for a guy like us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Totally. So yeah, this is an attempt to lower the hedge between musicians and kind of establish that there really are no boundaries anymore in music. There's more or less no genres or anything like that. Everybody's sort of a melting pot these days. So it seems like the frontier is podcasting. Seems like the frontier is here. What we're doing right here, the live streaming, the podcasting, the
Building communities.
the multiple media platforms, the social stuff like that. So
The final frontier.
the final frontier possibly is. We'll get into that on another episode, Brandon.
Hell yeah.
We're going to space next year.
Yeah.
If only.
Playing on the moon. Hell, we beat Metallica.
Yeah, take that, Jared Leto.
This is super cool, though.
Jared Leto.
This is super cool. I think this is an appropriately named podcast because it has been really easy with you guys. We all kind of got together by fate, it seems like, sort of a destiny thing. And
Right.
And it has been easy ever since. It's been sort of history ever since, man. It took off like nothing. It was easy.
Yeah.
Well, from different perspectives, though, it's so easy kind of means something a little different to me, because me and Taylor trying to find the right guys to be with us, that has not been fucking easy, right?
Not by no.
And we get to a point where we've got guys with us where we're not worried about what you guys are doing. We're not worried about where we're going to go. Rather or not, we're thinking, in the same musical direction, right? Mm-hmm. Sure. We go to practice. We do what we do, and it's so easy.
It's so easy, baby.
A lot of years, and a lot of frontmen that I think that carve. I know a lot of my buddies out there. They try to carve out a career by themselves for so long, and it takes you forever to find a band. And one of my first ever people that worked with me, I guess technically my first manager, he always told me, it's like, you don't ever form a band with your friends. You play until you find bandmates that you... Mm-hmm. And we did that once, and it didn't work out. And then we came back around, and then I ended up forming a band with my friends anyway, and it worked out this time. So sometimes age is a factor.
Yeah.
Man, and I'm just going to go ahead and skip to that early. I think one of the biggest factors I have seen personally in music is age, right?
For sure.
There's a lot of stuff I've done, and I've played in bands where dudes were a bit older than me, and that wasn't really the thing, but especially as younger musicians, I'm talking anybody like 35 and under, right? We catch a lot of flack coming from a lot of the guys that were doing this back in the day. About how we should do things, how we should approach things, and there doesn't seem to be any right answers, right?
No.
So when we go out and we go to do a podcast, or we go out and we're like, this set list is mostly originals, and they're like, no, you need to be doing like 90% covers, or Taylor joins a band on drums and it's a blues band, and they're like, weren't you writing
Stick with what you got going on,
Yeah.
Sort of like musically, culturally appropriated.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
the way that I always see it, I take so when I know somebody has been successful in the music world, if they come at me with some kind of insult with what I'm doing or whatever, I'm more keen to sit down and listen to them and take their advice. But at the same time, I truly believe that the music industry drastically changes every 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody was successful back in the 90s or the early 2000s, I'm going to take what I can from their advice, but it also might not apply to what's going on nowadays.
Right.
And despite what a lot of people want to think, there is no right and wrong way of doing this.
Right.
Everybody makes their own way. Everybody has their own unique origin story. And what I always get tired about is people think that the end game for me is just being this rich and famous guy. The end game for me is just making a living doing what I love. I don't care if I'm super famous. So these guys that come up to me and they talk to me like I'm some idiot because I'm not, it's like, you could be rich and famous and I could put you in, it's like I don't want to, because I've known people that have went down that road and they're not, they turn into a completely different version of themselves. They lose a lot of themselves, and it just sounds like a big pain in the ass, and I just don't want to do it,
Well, and the thing is, too, is like every musician has a different level of success that they want for themselves, and it varies widely. You know what I mean? Like you could have just a regular old Joe that wants to go out and play cover music, and he'd be perfectly fine with it, whether he makes a buck or not. He'd do it for free. Then you have guys that want to just do it to get paid.
Take over the world. Yeah.
And then you have others that want to showcase their own music, whether they get paid or not, and as long as the people love it, that's all that fucking matters.
Then you have Kanye West.
Yeah, no, then
Right.
because you always get the talk. Some of those guys, because I've had people approach me saying, well, that's an ego problem if you don't want to take advice from people like that. And it's like, no, it's not that I don't take advice from people. It's this that I'm an open book that takes advice from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the most easygoing guys ever. I'll listen to any advice you give me, but I have to look at my own needs and look at my own life and figure out like, hey, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to do it this way? Mm-hmm. Do I want to do this kind of a hustle or whatever? And there is some things where later down the line somebody has told me and said, hey, you need to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then a couple of years later, I'm like, I should probably do that. Mm-hmm. And I start doing it and it produces results. Mm-hmm. So, we're all on our own journey and all that stuff. So I think that's what it's mostly about.
The problem with a lot of that, sorry, Zach.
You're good, bud.
The problem with a lot of that advice that I hear coming is it's like, listen, I respect you as a person, but if you have less than half the people than I do at the shows that I'm playing, and your following on Facebook is less than a fifth of what we've got, and people aren't streaming your music, people aren't listening to your music, and people aren't coming to your shows, why are you trying to give me advice? Right?
Well,
Yeah.
that all
That
goes
is
back
so common nowadays.
Carries over.
it all goes back to what he was saying earlier about people in the 90s doing their thing, and they think they still, and there's nothing wrong with that, to an extent.
I wish it was still the 90s.
There's a difference between giving criticism and being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A big difference.
And just having bad advice in general.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. a lot of times people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Us included. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's guys that have been doing this for 30 years and haven't left their hometown bar. So it's like, you know.
They don't know what
Playing
they don't
the
know.
same song.
Yeah, they haven't
Yeah.
been outside the house long enough to know what they don't know.
Yeah, you know.
And it's like, don't get me wrong, music's a passion, right? For those people that have been playing their hometown bar for 30 years, I'm sure they have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. That's their outlet, right? But don't try to tell me what I'm doing wrong, because we're not doing the same thing.
I think in the very beginning of all this being said, it was touched on. It's in so many words explains it all the best to me. Like fame, you said success, you said fame. What is that to the individual musician? Like,
Exactly.
To me, it's nothing compared to like what it is to you. Probably it's similar,
Yeah.
maybe, but you know what I'm saying. From person to person, that varies so much, and I think that people on the outside looking in, the listener or the average Joe, you know, so to speak, they see us as these impractical, silly, reckless, like punk kids.
Young kid, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a viable way to feed your children. It's not just something for children. It feeds mine. You know what I'm saying? If y'all had, you know, Ty, you know, you guys all have kids. It feeds our kids. It's something that can be done, and if you give it the same due diligence that you would your job, you know, with
Right.
you know working for customs or whatever, then you would.
I don't know anybody that works for
Me
feds.
neither. Me neither. That's why I said that. That's why I used that one. No, but it's just like, you know, you give it. I told Taylor, you know, which I'm going to go ahead and gloat for Taylor. Josie Music Awards nominated, Artist of the Year won. You know what I'm saying? I told him when that happened, you know, the work that he put in to win that could have been put in 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So this isn't for the faint of heart. You know, like this is something that you got to grind in order to make your way for yourself, especially for a young guy. And the beauty of it is music is truth. And so there's not a right or a wrong way to do music, but there is a real and a wrong way to do it. And like, you know, when it's not real, and if it ain't real, you're not going to go nowhere. So if your music ain't real, don't tell me how to make mine. You know what I'm saying?
No, but that's an important. Everybody with their own definition of success. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the reason you get out there and just do music.
Yeah.
Right? When you get out there and you do music and you're playing music, I don't care if it's at your local bar. I don't care if it's at the fucking Klipsch, if that's what it's still called nowadays.
Yeah. I don't know anymore.
Wherever you're playing music, if you're getting out of it what your heart desires, do it. And do it that way. Just maybe
don't be a fucking asshole.
Don't expect everybody
You know?
else to have
So
that
easy,
same
dude.
definition.
It's easy. Don't be an asshole.
I had a promoter one time. I was telling him, like, I was just he was asking me how the year was going, and I was like, man, I'm having so much fun this year. And he's like, so what's the difference between, I think this was like 2022 or 2021 or whatever, and he was like, what's the difference between this year and the every other year? I was like, well, because I'm in my late 20s and I'm like starting to get to the point where I was like, all right, my time has passed, John. So I'm just having fun, and the minute you stop taking it so damn seriously, it just becomes so much fun. And to touch on stuff earlier, it's like I'm always willing to be wrong, especially the older I get, because I realize that I don't know everything.
Right.
And I love listening to when other people give me advice. I think there's better ways people can definitely do it, but I'm not one to talk. I mean, my band members know me that I'm not one to say things right all the time. But, you know, it's I don't know, it's just always about the experience. And I watched this podcast that this guy that was I think he was either a Navy SEAL or some top whatever guy. And
Jocko?
No, not Jocko.
Not
he
Jocko.
he was like the greatest troller or whatever on the episode of whatever. But he was good at trolling people. But he ended the podcast saying that, you know, I was born to live one life, and I'll be damned if I live that life to the fullest. That's why it's always confusing to me whenever I decide to go mountain biking, or I decide to play drums again, or I decide to go be a gym rat for a couple months, and people want it, because you'd be surprised how many people reach out to me and say, like, man, you just need to stick to one thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is my life.
Yeah.
I don't want to be one thing the rest of my life.
Me
And
either, buddy.
yeah, and you know, and you always do want to put your prime focus on one thing, whether it be music or because that one thing could possibly get you somewhere where you can do other things. It makes you the money to do other
But
things.
complacency kills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I get so sick and tired of doing the same thing. That's why I was so happy when we started this, because I'm in 3 bands now, and it takes up so much of my time. But if I get burnt out on one thing, I can move on to the next thing, and if that burns out on me, I can move on to the next thing, and, you know, I can put all my effort onto that, and then, well, not all my effort, but you get what I'm saying. Just, you know, I don't get burnt out on things so easily because there's multiple things I can do to take my mind off it and put my creative energy into
Because
it.
at the end of the day, musicians are a bunch of ADHD motherfuckers, and we can't just do one thing.
Or former addicts.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
thank God for Google Task. That's all I got to say.
and you know, for the younger people that potentially will be watching this, take notes when it comes to this stuff. I mean, we're still young-ish, you know. I just turned 30, but I mean,
So he's old, but the rest
you're
of us
gonna
are
be going through a lot of different changes and stuff when it comes to music. But don't ever get discouraged. You know, if it's something that you love, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. I mean,
That excites
music
me.
has been a part of my life for many, many years. I was born into it. Some folks aren't born into it, but I mean, it becomes a part of them
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
throughout the years. But yeah.
So if you guys all had one piece of actual advice for a musician less seasoned than we are, just one piece, you think it's legitimate advice? It's not the kind of advice we got where it's like, this is what you've got to do to do it right.
I got
But
it
if
already.
it's just one little piece, what would it be, Taylor?
Don't stop.
Yeah.
Say no to certain things.
Yeah. There you go.
Don't agree to everything.
That's good.
Don't ever pay to play a show.
Don't do that.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
That's a real good
Now
one.
I've done forgot mine now.
What a jerk.
Don't be afraid to spend the money that it takes to make you good at your craft, whether it be good gear,
Yeah, there you
good lessons, and I highlight lessons, like invest in lessons, whether if it's in mixing music, if it's for your instrument, if it's for theory, like invest in it. Don't just sit there for years on end doing the same thing every day, getting bored, getting sick of yourself, doing the same, getting the same results over and over. Because that's the definition of crazy, doing the same thing over and over and you're expecting a different result when you're doing the same shit. So, try and be different,
Hell yeah. That's good, Chris. Hey, that's Chris, everybody. He's the last samurai warrior.
He
Also,
really is.
real
He's the
quick,
monk in
guys,
our
if
story.
we want this to work out and we want the nice people at home to hear us, you got to talk into the
Yeah, yeah.
microphone. If
Am
you're
I
all the
not?
way over here, nobody's going to hear you.
Am I not? I keep on trying to look at the level
Damn
here.
near kiss the motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know?
I've been messing with the gains to make sure.
Check,
but
check. Okay.
It's a learning process, folks.
Zach, what you got, buddy?
This
Mom's
is
a
the
learning
first time
process.
we've done this.
My best advice is sort of it's a combo 2-in-1 sort of thing, and it's advice I wish I had been given a long time ago. I've been playing for 25 whole years, and the best advice I can give you is understand that there is always going to be kick-ass guitar players. There's always going to be kick-ass drummers. There's always going to be somebody out there that if you are to lean yourself up against that person or their ability, you're never going to be as good as that person. There's always someone bigger and stronger and better than you out there. So do not base your developmental trajectory on what somebody else is good at.
Yeah, don't compare yourself.
Yeah, understand that. Find out, and I think Zappa may have said this, or even Jimmy Page maybe, but find out what makes you weird, man. Find out what makes you Ty Hornback, Zach Benge, Taylor Hernly, all you guys. Find out what makes you different than the rest of the guys. And who cares if it sucks? Own that shit.
Make it your own.
Yeah, be that entirely because that's real and people will appreciate that. Look at Motorhead, dude.
Yeah.
Look at those guys. They're not technically skilled at all. And there's so many bands that aren't technically skilled at all. They own their sound. They got the Red Hot Chili Peppers, dude. That's a flavor.
They made it fucking work.
That's a pretty skilled band, though.
No,
in
it is,
fairness.
but dude,
Some people think they're weird.
Their first
Well, they are
record,
fucking weird. I mean, they kind of did funk rock.
They did.
right?
Yeah.
And they were really the first
does
to really
Bengebreakers.
do that.
so does Bengebreakers, by the way.
I've always told people Bengebreakers is Red Hot Chili Peppers with Frank Sinatra singing.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry.
I said,
That's awesome, dude.
That- I
Give
mean, that's
me
what that's how I've
5
always
minutes
described
more. 5 minutes more.
There's definitely always going to be somebody
Mr.
that's,
Wee Woo over here.
somebody that's bigger and badder than you at anything, but that's why it's all a learning process and it's a journey, and it's all based off a hierarchy, and those people wouldn't be better at you for nothing at all, so try and learn something from them.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're around a bunch of motherfuckers that are better than you, it eventually makes you better.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Well, and You know, as you go into a lot of that stuff too, it's like me, I'm a bass player. I'm going to try to be the best I can, right? Sure. But at the end of the day, if I don't get as good as fucking Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, Mark King,
then fuck those guys.
I'm not going to be disappointed about it, right?
Sorry.
Right.
There's people that we as musicians look at as just like they are gods.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's achievable with enough practice, like you're saying, Chris. Like, you practice enough, you'll get there eventually. But
Record
to
yourself.
me, it's
They
like
were in your
I ain't
spot
got
at
that.
one
I work a full-time job,
Yeah, record
and
yourself.
I would have to quit that to be as good as any of those dudes.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing.
But also, there's people out there who've been playing a fraction
Yeah.
as long as me who are
Yeah.
10, 20 times better than me that are 5-year-olds.
Now you're
and it's,
talking
yeah, I
about
don't know.
God
and it's
given gifts.
because but they've also had people, whether if it be because they come from more money or not, but someone in their life has invested the
Reinforced
basic
it.
foundations of everything that they needed there versus them sitting there like only playing to music or something.
Saving
you know what
up
I
to
mean?
buy a snare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they've been studying.
Yeah,
Everybody's journey is a little different.
totally.
But no, we were just right before we started recording. We were talking about tone and what kind of amp Zach was trying to get.
Tax time, y'all.
Yay,
It
tax
is
time.
tax time.
Got to get them W-2s in. But no, I was telling him, man.
Zach, that's exactly half.
It really
half.
just depends. Cheers. It really just depends on what kind of sound you're looking for. You know what I mean?
Fat with the PH.
Yeah. I use Fender amps. I got a Fender Deluxe 4.
I got a Fender Champion.
Me too.
I wouldn't admit to that.
Yep. Highly sought after. Highly sought after.
Highly sought after for beginners.
For beginners.
I modded it up though. I put a Celestian G1275 creamback in it, man, and that motherfucker screams.
Say
now.
creamback?
Creamback.
It is cream
basically-
It's
back.
extra creamy.
Ooh, we got that cream back.
If
dog.
Guitar Tone was a stack
Like
of
your mom
fluffy
when I'm done
buttermilk
with her.
pancakes,
Heard your mom
that's
likes
your
those.
Guitar Tone. Yeah.
But no, really, whatever you get, man, just
Check it with you first.
check it with you.
So I told
Everybody, if you get an amp, check it with Ty first.
No, but you're being fucking serious. I had to tell Zach something while you guys were out doing shit. I was about to purchase a Gibson Les Paul, right? Because I'm a bass player. I got my own gear preferences. I'm also a guitar player. I'm not. I mean, anybody that plays guitar sitting here can play circles around me.
No,
but I
he
am a
can
guitar
kind of
player.
play guitar.
I can't.
But I was about to purchase a Gibson Les Paul. It was this Facebook marketplace ad.
Indubitably.
Indubitably. But there was this girl that was on there saying, "Yeah, I'm selling all of my ex-husband's shit. I'm divorcing him.
Freshly
One of
tuned.
those.
And here's a guitar. I don't know what it is. It's $250. It was a fucking Gibson Les Paul, right?
Recently tuned.
And I'm like,
Recently, too.
it's got the same strings.
It's like
on it.
Yeah.
I'm buying that shit. She don't know what she got.
that's exactly where I was though. I was like, okay, well, I don't care. I don't know the dude. Like I'm gonna grab that guitar.
Yeah.
That's the best deal you'll ever see.
Right.
And it was like a wine red. Like it was fucking beautiful.
Oh yes.
But I sent it to the group chat, and I said, "Hey, here's the guitar I'm gonna fucking get."
He's like, I got the fucking deal of my
I got
life.
the deal. And Ty looks at it for half a second. He goes,
You're an idiot.
"Yeah."
I'm an idiot.
He says that's a fake, and I'm like, "Fuck." What makes you think it's a fake? And he's like, "Well, the bridge positioning and the fucking logo up here."
This is a picture of a dog, Brandon. I'm
You
sorry.
ever seen that Judge Judy episode where the chick buys the iPhone and she gets a picture of an iPhone?
Yeah.
That
That was the thing with like the PlayStations and Xboxes, like the PS5 and the Series X when they came out. People would be selling it, and in the description they would say, "Hey, by the way, this is only the box."
Yeah.
And people would still buy it and get pissed
Yeah.
because they only got the box.
Well, there's a lot of fucking scammers out there, especially on Facebook Marketplace, man. And it's always the
Scammy
same
bar.
story too. So if you're as a guitar player, you're looking for a fucking guitar, and you see one either on a group page or on Marketplace, whatever, and if they say that they caught their husband cheating on them,
Yeah, that's fake.
and they're getting rid of
Yeah.
their fucking shit,
for free.
I best believe that it's fucking
And
fake.
that was the same exact story I was getting.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
But I sent it to that group chat. Ty identifies it as a fake, and I'm like, but like,
There's an OnlyFans attached to that guitar.
He's like, but it's $250.
it doesn't look that fake.
There's an OnlyFans attached to the guitar.
And I was like, the bridge positioning is like, okay. And Ty's like, dude, it's a fucking fake.
Yeah.
And Ty goes, I admin a group on Facebook where it's a buy-sell group for musicians. And I'm like, fuck.
Do we really need to talk Ty up like that, though? I mean, we really need to add all of
I'm a
Ty's friends.
fucking admin,
Also
buddy.
an admin?
Well,
I'm a fucking
Hey,
admin.
I was an admin of a group that had over 50,000 members in it.
What?
Can you guys guess what group it was?
Creepypasta.
Yeah, it was a
Creepypasta.
creepypasta. Yeah, I was.
I
I
fucking
was
really?
remember that.
I was gonna say DDP, but
dude, I dove so deeply into creepypastas that I became like one of the admins for one of the biggest group. And
That's
when
cool.
and it ruined creepypastas for me.
Really?
Oh, that fan base was
Dude,
so
it
toxic.
does when you
I
admin a
bet,
group
dude.
that big or do anything that big. Like I was a moderator for one of those GTA like role play communities where like the cops are real people, the civilians are real people, and it was just like it took me maybe half a year before I was like, I don't want to play Grand Theft Auto anymore.
It
Damn,
sucked.
video games, man.
Well, because it's like I dove into creepypastas because there's so many great stories out there, and I'll make this quick. And like there's so many cool like horror stories that you can't get in horror movies, but all these kids, like literally kids, were just diving into just the basic ones like Slender Man and Jeff the Killer. And
Over
they're
and
like-
over.
Yeah, and they made like little romantic stories about them, and I'm like, well, this is really
Jesus
dumb. I don't
Christ.
want any of this. But anyway, going on, amps.
Well, going on, so Zach was saying like, yeah, I'll check with Ty first, and I'm like, no, really do that.
No, I will. I was being serious. I was being dead serious.
But no, I don't have the best fucking amp out there, really. I mean, the one I
It's a
ultimately
Hot Rod
want.
Deluxe.
Yeah, Hot Rod Deluxe
Yeah, it's
3.
a pretty decent
They're
amp.
nice,
And
dude.
it's not bad. Seriously, especially for like doing road gigs and stuff like that. It's a very reliable amp.
If I
60
bought a Fender
watts.
amp, it would probably be
What,
a Hot Rod Deluxe.
Let's talk about the tones we reach inside of the Taylor Hernly and Deadman band.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I played through a line 6, and my tone is shit. But these guys can say otherwise.
Well, we're gonna get you there, buddy.
I don't think it's shit. I think he's got a wide variety of tones. That's for sure.
You got to tweak. You just tweak it.
You
know
do-
what I mean?
the-
Get
the-
rid of that champion. and you'll
Yeah,
be good.
get rid of the champ. But the problem I have with a lot of
I
that,
also have a
my
champion.
brother bought one of those katanas, the Boss katanas.
Yeah.
And
I don't
it's
like
like
those either.
it could be a good amp. The presets that it comes with are shit. But if you spend hours with it behind a computer, you can make it sound however you want.
And dude, like I used to be against tube snobs, right? So
I'm
like
analog.
I always had like a solid state amp,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then I'm like, dude, these guys are fucking assholes. You
And
know what I mean?
But
Like-
then you played through a tube.
and then I finally got a tube amp. and
Let's
I'm like,
explain to them what a
dude,
tube amp is and how it differentiates from a solid state.
So
When I played through a tube amp first time.
yeah,
Dive into drum tone too, and
yeah,
Well,
we'll,
fuck
we'll
yeah.
get into that. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
But like, okay, so a solid state is strictly electrical. There's nothing tube about
There's
it.
a circuit
what I
board in
mean?
there.
Yeah.
Well, the tubes you got to keep in mind they're like I mean they're a physical glass
They're light bulbs.
like fuse that everything circulates through in order to keep things running properly, and because they circulate through those tubes, right? You get a different tone than if it is only circulating through an electrical signal.
A circuit board.
There's a huge difference that you hear in just like
It's
the,
warmth.
the clarity, the warmth, especially.
It has to do with your gain.
But the signal is, I mean, what the signal does, that is the tone that you're getting. And when that signal's running through those just tubes, you hear that.
Your signal is pressure sensitive when you have tubes.
So is your wallet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With tubes, you can play harder and it breaks up your gain, more or less. You are more dynamic. You're pressure sensitive with tubes.
Well, it doesn't sound in a nicer way. Well, try to be nice.
Digital.
It doesn't sound fake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
is it that it comes with more saturation?
Yeah.
more saturation.
Presence.
It's warmer sounding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like the difference between listening to a song on Spotify and listening to that same song on a vinyl.
or live.
Yeah.
You
What
know
you're
I mean? Like
what you're
it's-
gonna see different between tubes and solid states is a solid state amp has a gain and a clean switch usually. A tube amp usually won't. A tube amp will have a bright channel,
But
Well, if we're talking Fender amps.
I mean, you'll get a lot of
Bagheera
tube
has a
amps
switch, but
with a gain.
Right.
there's not a lot of that. But the switch is usually like a 1 and 2, not a clean and distortion.
Right.
It's like a bright and a normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, in a tube's tone, Chris, in case you didn't know this, the warmer those tubes get from handling the higher electrical currents,
The better it gets.
well, that's subjective.
Right, it is.
I
say it's fucking better.
the more
it is better.
warm and just like crunchy they're gonna sound, right? The longer a tube amp's been on, the more you've done with it, it's gonna have a different tone.
Sound stacks up better.
But with tube amps especially, I think what you get out of it, if you think of a tube amp tone, think about like I'd say Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean that dude played through like a Dumble amp.
Excellent example.
That dude
Well,
was
he
so
played through
loud.
Dumbles, but his main amp was a Vibroverb
Yeah.
Yep.
with a 15-inch JBL.
He played.
in it.
He was
50 or 64.
Jack
I mean.
White has a
so
great tube
loud
sound.
and so
Yeah.
tony that I've heard stories of. Hell, Rich, the guy that produces our records,
Yeah.
told
Yes.
a story about how he either ran sound for him or went to go see him at the Bluebird, and he ended up having to leave because he was too damn loud.
Really?
Yeah.
By the way, guys, we're based out of Indiana.
Yep.
We haven't
Yeah.
elaborated on that.
Central Indiana.
Hoosiers.
So
Yeah, we're
like
fucking
Sweetwater, if you want to hook us up.
Yeah.
We
No
local.
kidding.
But Zach, what kind of tone do you chase after?
Like I
what
said-
are your influences?
I
When it
Cough
comes to
drop.
tone,
Those are different.
When
Just
it comes to
tonally
tone,
speaking.
I love Jack White.
okay,
I love Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And then as far as modulation goes, I'm an analog guy. I really like mechanics. I don't like digital shit much.
right.
So the pedal as opposed to the button, I'm into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whammy as opposed to the button. But like my pedal board consists of, it's pretty run of the mill. I've got a big Muff pedal. I've got a wah pedal. I've got chorus, delay.
He does have a big muff. I've seen it.
I do have a big Muff. It's
His
actually
mom's got a big muff
it's
too.
it's a mini big Muff.
I've seen that one.
yeah. Very good. Very smooth. I'm not mad. I'm not even mad. Anyway, but no,
I'd be. It was sinful.
more or less market like you got it. You have it. Marcus King, the fat fluffy pancake tone.
Right.
Yeah. Where you can literally visualize the notes being stacked on top of each other and laid down on your face very nicely, like
Right.
a set of beautiful butt cheeks.
Kind of
Oh,
like
yes.
a harmonic type tone to it. You know what I mean?
I like what I said better, but yeah.
This
Yeah.
is getting me a little excited here.
Yeah.
Right. So what kind of tone do you look for when it comes to bass guitar?
So it's kind of a weird approach, right? But if you listen to my influences, they don't necessarily have the same tone I'm chasing after.
Right.
The closest I can get to sounding like the low end of like a grand piano, right? The happier I am.
There you
Okay.
go.
And I don't really know how to describe that in terms of like, well, yes, you're looking for an MPEG tone, or it's just like I'm constantly chasing it. The closest I've heard get to it, and of course, as soon as I say this, everybody's going to be like, oh, he's chasing down his dad's tone.
Who cares if you are? I mean, you know what I mean?
Your dad's
my
a
dad
fucking-
uses a pick, right? And I don't really like the picked tone quite as much as just like the hard finger style.
No,
tone.
you're a good slap bass player, dude.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
He does.
About all he can do, but it's
He
good.
does slapping a bass.
He spanks that motherfucker, dude.
Spank it. Mating them strings like they're owing me money.
But if you just hear the low end of a grand piano, the bass range of a
Yeah.
grand piano, that's where
I love it.
as close as you can get to that. That's where I want my tone to be.
I like the mids rolled off a hair.
Get it.
I run. I do have an Ampeg bass amp at the moment.
Bro,
and
scoop the
it's
mids
pretty
always.
good.
Oh yeah.
I would like to run out of a GK. They make some pretty good clean bass amps. But the problem is,
Skrilla.
a few years like before COVID, a GK bass amp was like $800. I would have got that. But after COVID, they're like $1,200.
I made $800 last year, guys.
Yeah, they're high as fuck.
Yeah. Wow. They climbed up quite a bit. I play out of one of those Sire basses, and it's not necessarily because I like what their pickups are doing or anything like that. It's
What
because
kind of sire is it?
Brandon's got endorsements, y'all.
well, it's the V7.
I've got depression.
He's got depression.
And I didn't mean to get that endorsement.
Yeah.
But it's the Sire V7
I've got an erection.
Gen 2. It's a jazz bass.
This is the party table.
Somebody out there will still be fascinated by what Brandon said.
Right, yeah.
They will. They will. They'll be like, wait, shut the fuck up, guys.
No, seriously.
Those other guys talk too much.
Yeah. Love you, man. I'm just fucking with you.
No, of course not. But that Sire, what I like about it is the versatility in the tone.
It's
right?
nice. I touched it.
So, yeah,
It's
well,
a
he
very
did.
nice bass.
Yeah, I paid
It
him
is a
$20
nice
for
bass.
it. But that onboard preamp, I can get pretty damn close, no matter what I'm playing through, to getting the tone I want, because I can adjust everything. And then, even going through the Ampeg amp, which Ampegs kind of have their own tone.
Yeah, they're killer.
right?
They do.
They're good.
When it comes to bass amps, if you play through a Hart key, if you play for a Fender, they're going to sound pretty close.
Ampeg has killer
it's bass.
cabs, man.
Ampeg makes an amp that has just their kind of like own thing to it. And I don't mind that thing. It sounds good in a lot of stuff.
Killer
but,
stacks, dude.
But having that Sire bass, I can kind of override that.
Yeah.
So if we're playing metal, if we're playing one of the first rehearsals you were at, Ty, you were like, all right, well let's fucking like do some old school rap grooves, and I was like, yeah, I got that. Let me crank my preamps bass up, scoop the mids, and it was just straight up like old school rap tone.
Right.
So versatility is one of the most important things to me in an instrument.
Yeah.
But my ideal tone is as close as you can get to a grand piano's low end.
That's a good way to put it.
Let's talk about Taylor's acoustic tone, man. Because I tell you what, he's
a
a
beast.
bad motherfucker.
I'll tell
on
you,
acoustic.
I think a lot of that was on accident, personally.
Flat picking fool, dude.
What, my acoustic tone?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
That's
You
like
do
the-
have some damn
what
good
guitar do you?
acoustic tone.
What guitar? Are
It's
you
a
using?
Taylor 110E, and the crazy thing about it, I don't know if I just got lucky the day that I got it, but I've played other 110Es, and mine doesn't sound like any other 110E, and she is Lenore. I've been playing her for about 10 years now, and my tone is sheer luck, because I just plug it in and put a little EQ on it, and
It just happens.
yeah, it's what it sounds like. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it, and it's nothing I'm doing. Matter of fact, I treated her like shit for a long time.
Well, I think that is what you're doing.
Check out Hotel Child,
Yeah.
Taylor Hernly.
You,
I honestly think, as weird as it is, treating it like shit is part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've heard those other 110Es too.
yeah.
And I preach to you forever about, like if you're going to be on the road and you're not going to fucking have it in a fancy case, get a laminate top. But what you've done to that
That's what I do.
natural top 110E has given it a unique tone amongst acoustics.
What kind of pickup is that? A Fishman pickup?
It's a
That's
piezo.
A piezo?
yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's like that mid range.
Piezo.
That mid range is just fucking. It's right there.
I've also cut my teeth on that guitar. I've played more shows than I could ever even count with that thing in my hand. So
It's worn in for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have to
that's-
do an episode where we bring all of our shit
Yeah.
in.
I'll probably pull up a
Especially
picture
even you,
when I edit.
even you. Bring
sure.
your fucking drums in and be like, hey,
We'll
this is
put
what
them
I'm
right
playing.
here.
I
Yeah.
speak for my brother, who is my drummer in Bengebreakers, and also he's going to be watching this podcast, and he is a fan of yours, Kris, and yours, Taylor, as drummers. If you could give any insight as to, particularly coming from Nick, the types of hoops and how that affects your tone as a drummer, if you could speak on that, that would help my brother.
Yeah, what
personally.
kind of tone are you chasing, Chris?
I'll warn you before he starts. When it comes to sounds, this is the most scientific motherfucker I know.
Who,
Oh
him?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, good. I mean, however you got to say it,
Science it, bro.
My brother wants to.
Let's hear it, but make it
I'll talk
for
about
stupid people.
the Taylor Hernly sound. Do you want to talk about hoops with me?
Yeah, you
Like
guys
drum
tag
tuning?
Team that bitch.
Just the hoops in general, because I'm kind of rusty on that shit myself. So I know that certain ones resonate more in one's zone.
So you got to know your drums.
Vintage hoops. Huh?
And this is my personal opinion. I'm not self-taught drummer, but I've kind of gone through this drummer journey, not reaching out on certain things that I probably should have, and drum tuning's one of them.
Google's
But
help,
when I bought my drums a long time ago, I had somebody tell me that DWs do better when you tune the resonant and the beater head at the same frequency, because they ring a lot better. Because they're a big drum, they deserve to ring all the way through. And if you want to muffle it, then you buy like drum dots or something and put them on the thing.
How do you know what frequency it is? Like, is it just a by ear thing, or is there like a drum tuner?
I do it by ear. You can get a drum tuner, but most drummers will tell you that they're a waste of money.
Yeah, they have drum tuners, but I've yet to see one drummer
drum
use
dial.
one.
I had a drum dial, and they're not bad. It's just that if you know what it's a drum. If you know what you hear in your head, you can probably find it. You're not trying to tune it to a note or anything.
Does your batter head get tuned tighter than your resonant head?
No, I keep mine at the same.
Okay.
That's
and
what
now,
it's
like
saying.
a-
It kind of depends on the
Right, but-
drum,
Well, like
the genre, the
Yeah, yeah,
feeling,
yeah.
the drummer.
Well, that's another thing with drums. There's because so many genres require so many things, and that's why it's important to know your drums.
Yeah.
Like with my DW kit, I know that if I tune both my heads at the same frequency, it's going to be a bigger sound. And if I need to bring it down, I'll just muffle them.
Okay.
And play with better dynamics and all that. But I know some other drums, it's better to tune the resonant head higher than but it just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to answer like your brother or anybody on the
Yeah. Fuck you, Nick.
on the rim difference right now. I really don't pay much attention to that, to be honest. A lot of people, it's actually kind of it's a mistake to think that you can just get the average sound of the drum shell alone by tapping it, because you'll get a different tone if the hardware's on the drum shell. You'll get a different tone depending on if you're tapping on the side or on the
How it's
outside of
mounted.
the shell. There's no genuine way to actually tell. It's kind of like a selling point that people have, especially like DW. There's an old video of John tuning the drums and be like, if you tune it to the shell, it's like it harmonizes with itself or whatever, and you'll get really the average amount of volume no matter the tuning that you're using, even if you got one head on the drum. The thing that you're doing is it's very genre specific when you're tuning, for one. But what I personally do, especially for Taylor's group, as a metal drummer, I love a really tight dead kick and super punchy toms and a cranked snare, you know what I mean? But for Taylor's music,
What do you mean by a crank snare?
a cranked snare, and I really basically do this for Taylor stuff too, is the resonant shell. You don't even have to hear it or really tune it by pitch. You crank it tabletop tight until you start getting resistance to where it's not really going to turn anymore on the resonant head. And then for Taylor's sound, I've got basically like a medium high sound on the snare, but I tune the batter heads until I like the attack on them to where they feel like they're bouncing on my wrist.
Yeah.
So for the toms,
You hearing this, Nick?
Punk.
Toms are honestly super easy, minus floor toms. Toms, you can kind of really give the resonant head 2 twists, and then adjust your batter head to your attack, and I guarantee you, like, it'll be in tune. And what I mean by that is, like, so on your resonant head, literally give 2 turns for any genre as your resonant head, and adjust your batter head for attack. Just keep that in mind, and I bet you'll get it exactly where you want it. In terms of floor toms,
Those are my
you
favorite
want them
toms.
to essentially be just as dead as your kick, because they're such a wide drum that they're meant to keep rhythm in a different way, like your kick. So for Taylor's music, I've actually got a pillow against my resonant head. I've got it tuned, somewhat low. I like my resonant head, my batter head, to actually be punchy with my feet, to where it's got like this beach ball bounce to it.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like there's air coming out of the drum when he hits it. It's cool.
I'm not sure of the sizes of my cymbals, but in terms of, like, if you're playing like southern rock stuff, you need to be dynamic with your cymbals. You're not smashing them.
Hell of a drummer.
On my snare, I've actually been recently experimenting with adding like a weight or of some kind, like an ankle weight to the snare to compress it a little bit more so that it doesn't resonate as much. Get good mics for your drums, and consistently, you're going to have a hard time tuning your drums if you never hit them. you know, like if you never play your guitar, you're gonna have a hard time tuning it by ear. But if you have struck it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times in your practice sessions, you know how you want it to hear in your head. So you should be able to twist that thing to yourself.
Don't overcomplicate things.
So like
Exactly.
with guitars, right? And basses are a little different because you're playing mostly with your fingers, and of course that's excluding Zach, who I
play
think I
guitar
can
like
count
a-
on one
Yes,
hand how
both.
many times he's used a pick.
He's a
with-
hybrid
around me.
guy.
Yeah, very hybrid.
Mark
But
Hoffner over
with
here.
with guitars, a lot of the tone that you get, it can be straight from your pickups.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the tone wood and all that stuff, depending on how hot your pickups are, might not matter.
It might come from the pads of your fingers
So-
straight up.
Well,
quick.
but again, like depending on how hot your pickups are, it might not matter at all. If you get a set of like Fishman Fluence or EMG, it's gonna sound like Fishman Fluences or EMGs.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah.
But with drums, right? Like there's no way to get a head or a
You're hearing the
rim or
drummer.
anything like that sounds only like the head. It's gonna sound like the drum
Kris
kit
Harves.
as a whole.
Yeah, or the drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, tone comes from your hands. But a super important topic I want to add to this that I would highly recommend to any drummer is I'm actually a double bass player because I come from metal. So a huge part of how I play is I'm used to hearing processed sounds and really processed kick sounds. The thing that I love about using a double bass on single kick music is that when I'm playing live or in studio, I can essentially add more power to my kick drum,
Your second one.
to the audience, to the rhythms. A huge part of Led Zeppelin, Bonham's playing was he essentially played drums as guitars, and the guitars played the drum parts. And I think very much in that way. If you're a drummer, I mean,
That's true,
frequencies
man.
as themselves, if you play a chord and then play it in slow motion, it sounds like a drum beat. It has a polyrhythm to it, which breaks down to drums. So drummers are guitarists, and guitarists are drummers.
Totally, dude.
So
Yeah.
And I'm stuck in the middle trying to
And I've
translate
noticed, too-
languages between the two.
I've noticed too, Chris, a lot of the greatest drummers, they normally follow the guitar
Used to.
player. Now, usually, and there's plenty of other bands too out there that they follow the bass player. But like, Jimi Hendrix, for example, you have Mitch Mitchell. You got fucking, not Rush.
Well, you get a band like Jimi Hendrix, you don't really have a choice but to follow the guitar player, right?
Well, to a
like the
point.
bass player's following the guitar player, and the drummer's following the guitar player because it's like Marcus Miller, right?
but he was kind of like a jazz guy
Marcus Miller.
from
No,
Hendrix.
Mitch Mitchell.
Oh yeah, Mitch Mitchell's for sure.
So the way that I've always approached it on stage when it comes to that aspect is that your bass player is giving you the foundation of the music,
Right.
and the guitar player is giving you the direction. You have to listen to both of them. You have to listen to your band. And when it comes to tuning, the best advice I could give anybody is just
Taylor's also an incredible drummer. I want to
Yeah.
add that before he starts.
What you got to do is you got to sit down with it and experiment with different tunings. We all go through that phase where we just completely suck at tuning drums, and then it starts to make sense.
Never know it all.
Yeah, you never
Like,
know
it
everything.
changes. The information always changes.
And
That's
your
music
taste
as a
always
whole,
change.
though. Like,
yeah,
you never-
your taste always change. And so when it comes to tuning drums, I would listen to your favorite drummer ever and figure out how like not just your famous drummer by how he plays, but your favorite drummer how he sounds. Like you find drums and you're like, I like the way that sounds, and I would dive into that style of drumming and I would try to figure out what they did to tune their drums, because a problem that I had for so many years was I would try to figure it out myself, because I figured if I sat down and learned it exactly how they did it, that I'm just stealing from them. And then the day I finally sat down and actually copied what they did, I could make it my own way too.
Exactly.
So
Because
don't
it
hold
doesn't
yourself
matter-
back from ego or anything like
and
that.
and also, as a drummer, really study the artist that you're
Are you
admiring,
hitting on me
because
back here, Chris?
you need to understand if the artist that you're listening to, especially in this current day and age where there's such a mix of people who listen to older music and music that comes out nowadays, you need to understand on like if your drums are processed or not, because like whether if it's especially metal,
He's
but
talking about compression and EQ and stuff like that.
not just that, but like it's hard to replicate some sounds, because at the end of the day, especially newer bands that are coming out now, all the newest guys, they've got super quantized stuff, it's super compressed, EQ'd,
It takes a lot of the individuality out of it, though.
It can, but it needs to, like in the metal world, for example, it sounds like you're smashing your drums, but it's just heavy compression. So you need to focus on your dynamics, regardless of your genre, where you come from at the end of the day.
That's good advice.
Because the best way I've always explained metal drums, and this is like whenever you're trying to take somebody that comes from a metal background and go into something more dynamic, which is something we've had to do for you, is metal drums. Dynamics in metal drums means that you just don't play. Instead of which I could be wrong. There are great examples. There are obviously exceptions, but like in jazz and in blues and in some rock music, there's very, very distinct dynamics, especially in jazz. Like there's moments where you're playing really, really quiet, and then you're bringing it up, and yeah. And we were listening to that Paul Simon song the other day, where like at the end of the song, they're like purposely fading it out where it gets lower and lower and lower. So a lot of times, a lot of people that come from a metal background, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think the problem that they would have is the world of dynamics where you're not sitting behind triggers and you're not sitting behind compression, and it's not that they're bad drummers. It's just that this is it's like when you learn your first. Yeah, it's like when
it's a whole different world.
It's like when you learn your first swing and you're not grooving anymore. You're swinging and you're like, well, what's this feeling? And then you finally get it down and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Right.
It's just it's a mindset, and and drums are they're such a musical instrument, and I preach it all the time, and I have such a passion for them outside of songwriting because I feel like I'm so tired of seeing the basic Neanderthal sitting behind a kit and just wailing away because it's such a musical thing. You can do so much cool. A song isn't anything without drums.
Each drum is an instrument.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
and that's not even just drums, right? Like it doesn't matter which instrument you're on. And we've seen it a million times, me and you trying out different musicians and whatnot. If you approach any type of music, like when I first started country, right? I'd never played fucking country. I'm a metalhead. I'm sitting here wearing a Dio shirt.
Until this band, I didn't play anything even resembling country.
No, and you have to like learn the different patterns and the dynamics and the feelings even that just go into everything. If you sit me down as a metal musician and you're like, okay, we're gonna play a 1-4-5 pattern. I'm not going to know when the fuck that 4 is coming, right? You got to do it and learn it to know when that change is coming in most songs that fit into that style.
Yeah. The bottom line is, whether you know theory or not, each song has sort of a spirit, and you need to know what the vibe is. If you know what the vibe is of the song, you need to be able to hear the guy next to you. That's essentially what dynamics is.
My advice to anybody that is going into something that they've never done before is don't worry so much about the playing aspect. I mean, that's important. But go into the history of it.
And the hearing.
What made me appreciate jazz music so much is to look at the history of it. Because Jacob Marcus, our other band member, he showed me.
Get better soon, bud.
Yeah, he showed me so much things about jazz that I didn't realize. I didn't realize that jazz was the underground music. Only the rejected people of society played jazz. So you're talking about underground bars just jamming out to just green sleeves and shit.
Yeah. Right.
And then I looked up old jazz music, and then jazz slowly turns into rock and roll, and you saw how these jazz drummers approached rock and roll. Mitch Mitchell was he was one of the drummers that was the line between jazz and rock. Then you get John Bottom, who laid down the foundation. If you study the history of music, if you study the history of all these genres that you're trying to dive into, it makes you get in like reggae and all that stuff. If you study where it started and where it is now, you understand where all these pieces come in. And you can take from every century. Like there's stuff that I do on drums that I learned from playing rockabilly, and jazz and all this stuff, and
And you can kind of see how guys like Bonham inspired guys like Joey Jordison, because, like, for example, right left kick, it's very common fill for most guys. Like, you'll spend hours on your drum kit. Yeah, exactly. That turns into right left kick, right left kick, which is a huge fusion and metal fill. Like, Jordison used that more than anybody and popularized that fill for metal all the subgenres.
Right.
You know, so it's
Oh yes.
Well, the thing about like, okay, any kind of music, I don't give a fuck what genre it is, whether it be country, blues, metal, it all originate, like especially drumming, it all originates from jazz. I mean, listen to
blues.
Chris Adler,
I
dude.
can't.
And
Like,
blues.
well, obviously in blues.
came from the jazz. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, listen to Chris Adler, man. Like, he is a jazz drummer, but he just plays heavy music. You know what I'm saying?
Chris Adler. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Lamb of God.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy to watch like a jazz drummer learn how to play metal.
Yeah.
Because they already have the chops for it,
Exactly.
and I've always encouraged drummers to sit down and really learn jazz because it doesn't just make you a better drummer, it turns you into more of a human drummer.
It teaches you
well,
mechanisms.
Yeah.
here's the other thing on that is, no matter what you're specialized in, whatever you're practicing the most that you're specialized in is going to make you rusty at every other genre outside of that.
You got to do everything.
So
It's a
regardless
garden.
on who you look up to, if it's a jazz guy, you know, like watch Drummeo's examples that are coming out now. Like, you've got dudes who can shred other dudes who can't play their songs.
Right.
And it's because it's not their style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
and
a vibe.
and that's a huge part of dynamics. Like the other night, for example, when is it Slow Jam?
Yeah, slow jam.
Slow Gen, you know, the Taylor Hernly and Dead Moon Band opened up for them, and I felt like Taylor Hernly, you know, this guy right here who's a badass on drums, outplayed me based off the show alone. You know what I mean? And
Based off the set list and shit, you mean, or what?
yeah, like
Or just in general.
off the energy of the show. So it's not even about you being better than other drummers or anything like
Right.
that. It's about you being specialized in
Exactly.
the group that you're with.
Well,
And if you can,
Check out Zappa.
anybody, you know, like if you're specialized in the songs that you're gonna play to people live, you're gonna fucking kick ass.
Now,
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how it works on the drums.
Own it.
But how I've always equated
Own it,
that
yeah.
on the bass is what you add to your toolbox, right? So if I hop in my toolbox right now, right? I mean my literal toolbox.
You find a
I've got
one-hitter. No.
hammers, clamps, fucking hammer drills, whatever you
Playboy
want.
magazine.
I don't have any
A
of those
couple.
in there, unfortunately. But
I do.
What you add to your
They're in the RV in the
I
cabinet.
need those back. Actually.
whatever you add
the
to your
bathroom.
musical toolbox, right? That's what's going to bring out what you know about what you're doing, right?
Tricks, yeah.
So like if you
Exactly.
practice metal a lot, that's fine, right? Like I said, I'm a huge metalhead. Every time I sit down and play music that I'm just fucking playing, it's always like Sabbath, Dio, Maiden.
stay
I'm
away
a
from
big
metal.
classic metal guy, but if you listen to Taylor Hernly's songs, and Slow Gen's pretty new, like we haven't written an original together yet, but
It's
but
Van Zandt
I've been
meets
able to
Pantera.
incorporate my style into what you've already written for Slow Gen. You will hear Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
and you will hear Dio.
The influences.
You will hear that stuff in there because what I do as a bass player, I'm going to be honest with you guys. If you tell me to play a scale, it's going to be a pentatonic scale.
Me too, bro.
But what I will do is
Pentatonic.
I will sit down and
5
hear a
notes.
song, and I will play the wrong notes, practicing it until I know what the right notes are.
Yeah, 5 of them.
Well, I've always said the best drummer that could ever play for anybody that's playing my songs would be a metal drummer. So you've done a phenomenal
Yeah, no,
job.
you've
doing
you've
a
done
kick-ass
incredible
job.
job.
you guys are
But
all great, man.
If you sit down and you listen to all these different genres, and instead of thinking about it as practicing like metal or anything like that, you sit down and you think, well, I was able to steal these tricks off of John Bonham, and I was able to steal these tricks off of fucking
Exactly.
Joey Jordison, and I was able to steal these tricks off of what is it, Buddy Rich?
So
Is it Buddy Rich?
Yeah,
So
Buddy
so
Rich.
you steal these tricks, and you have like a full toolbox of like, I can incorporate all of this shit into pretty much whatever I'm doing, right? I don't know if it's the same on drums. I'm not a drummer. You've heard me play drums,
Surely it is.
right? Like I can
You want
that's about all I got on drums. But in terms of bass and guitar both, you're able to incorporate quite a lot of different genres and whatnot into what makes you you.
I will tell you this much, and this is like almost the secret to all things, and a lot of like unworldly masters of drums have preached this. Like I can't even pronounce the dude's. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the dude's name, but
that Estepario or
well, him, and then there's another guy that I follow too on Instagram that he's from Israel, and he's just unhuman when it comes to chops and stuff. And what they all preach is you take the simple stuff and you get it down to a T.
I tell my brother that all the time.
Like you don't it's cool to learn all the complicated stuff, but when you get that simple stuff learned and it's to a T, everything, like a big problem I always had with drums, and even to this day.
Master the space between beats.
Exactly. And practicing it at a slow tempo.
Yeah.
I have a couple drum books at home that says if you practice this stuff anything above 110 BPM, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You need to practice it at a really slow tempo. And I think that's where a lot of my rushing issue, because I have a really bad problem rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my rushing issues is because when I learn something new, I want to play it as fast as I can. But if you learn a really weird linear fill, or this is anything in any instrument, if you learn any complicated fill or anything, and you practice it at 60 BPM until every note is perfect and you can hit it, and you slowly speed it up, and it that kind of practice takes forever. But once you get to that fast tempo, those guys that can play that fast shit clean as hell, that's what they do.
That is the thing, though. Like, if you take a complicated riff, I don't care what song it is. Take the solo from Crazy Train, right? It's easy to play that at the tempo it was written on, right?
I'm good.
But if you play it slower, it turns into a whole different thing. You have to make every note articulate. You have to make every note clear when you play it slower.
Yeah.
Well, and to add on to Taylor's point, 60 BPM is one way to approach it, but 30
slow, by the way.
BPM is honestly where you
say
start
30?
being the click.
Did you say 30? I'm
30.
sorry. Okay.
Yes.
30.
That would be hard as shit.
That's
30
slow.
BPM, and that's what I practice to.
I'll play it double time, 30.
And that's simply because at that point you're essentially doing all the subdivisions of the notes yourself, and that's one way to get tight as a band is to literally, if you have in-ears, like take advantage of that if you guys can have a click together.
I see what you're saying.
But especially when you're at home by yourself,
Play
practice
60
to
to
a
a
click.
30 beat click.
Like get your dotted eighths, get your quarter notes, get your quarter note triplets, get your eighth notes, get your eighth note triplets, get your 16ths, get your 16th note triplets, get your 32nd notes, And as a drummer, you can even go faster than that. You know what I'm saying? Like most music isn't going to go beyond that, but like the human ear, the thing that's special about jazz is that there's elements of clave in there, things like
Mutes.
the tumbao, which is a series of I think rhythms of 3 and 5. Here in the
notes and
West,
shit.
we're taught to hear rhythms in 4.
Or
But
divisions of four.
in other countries, they've got common songs in 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
That's true.
It has nothing to do with necessarily diving into the science of music, but I think the human ear hears things based more off of clave anyways. Like if you did a common 2-3 dot 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 dot, that's a bastardized version of being in 4, but it's 2/3. You know what I'm saying? So I think
I do actually.
if you learn how to actually start experimenting with subdivisions and metric modulations and stuff like that, it's going to make you super tight to a click.
Right. Well, and if you're wanting to dive into the jazz style of drumming, I got a few guys here that you ought to check out. Kenny Clark, Elvin Jones, Buddy Rich, obviously. Buddy Rich is my all-time favorite jazz drummer, man.
He's a beast,
He's
man.
a beast. Papa Joe Jones, Philly Joe Jones.
A couple chick drummers too, jazz.
Oh, yeah. Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd is a beast, man.
Steve Gadd is arguably, there's a whole book that he wrote called Gaddiments, and it's about having rudiments on your drum set, which rudiments on your drum set is so important. It helps you come up with so many cool grooves and
Nick.
ideas for songs. And
This episode's for Nick Hampel.
And we were touching base with John Bonham and Mitch Mitchell and all that stuff. These guys, they grew up listening to jazz. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Did too.
they're gonna have that
Old
jazz
country.
sound.
And to add on to that, Zeppelin, even though they're an older band to us now,
Killer, bro.
they were going for the newest technology that was coming out back then.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you look at the Glenn Johns method, which is
Absolutely.
a recording technique, most drummers back then were recording with one mic.
Yeah.
To use more than one was crazy. It's like, what are you doing?
But it's the way to go, bro.
So don't be afraid. There's so many people out there that I've met that are especially beginner musicians who are like, I only listen to music that's in analog gear.
Right.
Or shit like that, and it's like, dude, do not be afraid to experiment with the shit that's coming out now because it's the newest stuff. Like,
yeah,
Well, you gotta understand too.
They're-
Like nowadays, when you're going into the studio, you're not playing live as a band either. You're playing to a click track if you want. You know what I mean? Like,
More than
that's my
likely.
favorite way of recording records.
Me too.
Is to go in there, you do an acoustic scratch track, and then the drummer goes in there and lays down the drum parts, and then the bass player goes. Because I feel like, a lot of people are against that because, like, well, you don't get that raw sound.
That's how I do it, bro.
I disagree. I think my record sounds pretty damn good for what.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're going to the studio, dude, and you got the bells and whistles available to you, use them. If you don't use them, I think you're a snob. I'm sorry.
yeah,
It's like-
straight up.
Well, it's like you make better records that way because because there's nothing worse than going into the studio and playing drums with the bass player, and doesn't matter how good the bass player is, doesn't matter how good the drums are. You're sitting there playing, and then one of you screws up,
Yep,
and you have a good take, and the other person doesn't, and then you got to go back and redo it,
Yep.
and it's like, But if you're in there and you're by yourself and you have all the moment in the world to think and
Yeah.
come up with ideas, and there's no pressure, it's way better. And I always like track by track.
Well, and it sets
You
a bar
talking
for
shit?
you. Like it gives you as an individual with your own music
Yeah.
something to try to attain. Like you are going to go out and tour that, or you've already been touring that song.
well, I guarantee you right now, like if Led Zeppelin and all these great fucking bands back in the day, like in the '60s, if they had click tracks to be playing to, they would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, use that to
Yeah.
your advantage.
It wasn't Pink Floyd like one of the first bands to really start using click tracks because
Does time count?
huh?
Does time count as a click track?
Probably.
Right.
No, because they had all
unless
those
you're
weird,
unless you're Ringo Starr, because that motherfucker keeps time.
'Cause-
doesn't
oh.
matter what it is.
Ringo was insane because there's stories of like, so that was back in the day when live audio. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, people. I don't know, but where live audio wasn't obviously as advanced as it was today.
No.
They're used to people going to seeing Sinatra and everybody sitting there all quiet watching. And so you got all these teenage girls in the crowd just screaming their asses off.
Yep.
You can't hear the music. The musicians can't even hear what's going on.
Right.
And Ringo had horror stories about how the only way he knew how to where the timing of the song was is he would watch, Paul's foot. And that's how he kept in time. So Ringo was a phenomenal timekeeper because he couldn't even hear the music, and he's just sitting there
Trenches.
just knowing the song like
Well,
the back of his hand.
And that's
some
what
trenches.
kind of reminds me of you, bro. Is like Chris. He's a fucking human metronome. Like this dude, he stays on time.
You don't leave the grid,
He's a panty
even when you
dropping
pay
fool,
him to.
dude. Panty dropping
I
fool.
swear. Like I know you've been talking Taylor up on his drumming, but man, you don't give yourself enough.
No, you don't.
credit,
You're
man.
solid
Like,
as fuck, bro.
you're
I made
good.
an ass out of myself at Checker Flag. so-
You're good, bro.
Well, it is what it
Best
is.
drummer I've ever played with. Seriously,
It was a great show, regardless.
I mean that. Played with a bunch of
Yeah,
them.
we got Taylor Hernly and Dead Moon right here, and we got Slow Gin, which is me. You brought the.
My name's
fucking-
Brandon. Yes.
You brought the.
He's got
fucking
the worm.
snake
Oh,
out.
you want to give me a hug?
He's got the worm. He's got the worm with him.
I hate snakes, by the way, y'all. So
Brennan.
I
thanks-
fucking
thanks
love
for
them.
that.
I didn't even notice that. That's
Hey, she's a good girl. She's a good girl. She
Yeah.
is.
No, she's as innocent as it gets.
She
man.
is. She's nice.
Totally.
She's a really expensive
wanna trade
necklace, but
spots?
We're good.
He said, mm-hmm.
I'll just suffer in silence.
It's a baby.
Yeah.
Look at this snake.
Yeah, we are essentially three bands. Three bands. My other two guys,
Don't wave your
Aaron
finger
and
in
Nick,
front of
are
her.
not here. Obviously, they're not actively a part of this band, but there are three bands that make up this band.
Good
And,
Lord, can you imagine if we had 6,
Oh, geez.
7 people in here?
holy hell.
But no, if you're around the Indianapolis, anywhere in Indiana, tri-state area, it
Yeah.
doesn't fucking matter.
Straight up.
If you want to be on the show, man, give us a shout out. Hit us up. What's our email again?
We don't have one yet.
We don't have one yet. Well,
just hit me up at taylorhernlyband@gmail.com.
There you go.
there we go.
Yeah.
taylorhernlyband@gmail.com. I should.
Because
talk in
essentially,
microphone.
what we're wanting to do here, we want to obviously talk music and tone and our favorite fucking bands and shit like that. But we want to showcase local musicians and abroad. You know what I mean? Like
We want to connect with
we
y'all.
don't get enough of this. Pre-COVID, we didn't have much podcast when it comes to showcasing music and stuff like that.
No, not at all.
But once COVID happened, man, like it killed the fucking music scene for the longest time. A bunch of bars was closed down. You couldn't really go out and play much. I was fortunate enough to be able to still do that.
Me
but
too.
there was a lot of people out there that was hurting. People make a living on this shit, and they don't get enough airtime and stuff like that. So, like, I think that this podcast could do really well for other musicians.
We're helping each other up and out.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. You're going to see us do a couple of episodes out at Rainwater Studios, right?
Yeah.
And the goal, or at least what I perceive as the goal of Rainwater Studios, and Keenan was in a band with me for several years, Keenan Rainwater.
Good friend.
We want to bring the people that we know in local music, and especially the people that we believe in local music,
For sure.
out to the forefront, right? So like the Bengebreakers, for example. The first time I heard the Bengebreakers, they were on Rainwater Studios, and
Alumnus.
and that was the first thing I thought. I've said it several times to you now. I heard the Chili Peppers with like fucking Frank Sinatra, singing over the top of them.
That's awesome.
And it kind of is like that. Like you've got
weird.
all of those rhythms. I feel like you've got a lot of Dire Straits type influences in your guitar playing.
He's very melodic.
We'll edit that out.
He's very melodic.
I'm a rhythm guy.
No, it isn't that.
No,
It's
you've
just, that's
got-
how you play. Like, it's-
Yeah.
I'm a percussionist, dude. My dad is a solid ass professional drummer, and that's where I was raised at. That's where I started.
Would this
That
be weird
carries
without the
over.
I can
snake?
tell.
I'm a drumming guitar player.
I can tell.
Yeah.
And that's good. It's
Would,
good.
would, would this be weird without the snake, Chris?
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. He's been sitting here petting me.
I'm fucking dying.
You never know. She's like, who the fuck?
No,
is
yeah.
that
As
thing?
far as I use a lot of interesting offbeat patterns as a guitar player that go well with the percussion usually in what I'm doing. I try to at least.
Well, you do, and you can tell. Like you've told me several times, like when you first started playing music, you were a drummer,
I was.
and I hear that in your guitar playing.
That's good. Well, and that's what I said in a previous episode was, find what makes you weird and do that a lot. And that's what
Yeah.
I've been doing for literally 20 years. I'm only 31. So, yeah, I'm a weird dude. These guys are weird ass dudes.
But also, that's not.
Mom's a weird
that's not
dude.
Yeah, she
saying
is.
only focus on what
is.
you think makes you, and only do that. Like, still focus on the other stuff.
Listen to other people. Yeah.
And learn how those foundations make you.
Just
You
don't be a
gotta,
dick, man.
you gotta go through the trenches.
Yeah.
That's for sure. You gotta do a lot of things that you don't want to do. You're gonna have to some days, like especially young cats. They're gonna have to be in cover bands and do all this shit.
You're going to have to swallow your pride at some point, too.
You're gonna have to fucking play Mustang Sally every fucking weekend.
You're not the best one out there.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of what the trenches are, but and I'll tell you this: out of us,
We're all hungry.
when we talk about the trenches, right? I've been there a little bit, but Taylor, like especially
He's in
you
'em. Yeah, he's in
with
'em.
the shit you've done. Tell us about the trenches.
Well, real quick,
after what Chris has to say.
the trenches don't have to be the trenches. The trenches are you and your bad practices and your wasted time
It's
and
the
your
rust.
lack of people, helping you and teaching you what they
Ooh.
know. The trenches are
The beginning.
not necessarily your fault, but if you feel like you're in them,
Basically, there should be a
Taylor's
hard
going to
part.
describe how he was in them, but
Chris is getting all philosophical on
Yeah.
us.
Namaste, Chris.
We used to call him the professor.
the thing is that if you feel like you're in the trenches, it's because you're not receiving progress.
That's not
I
necessarily true,
disagree
though,
entirely.
Chris.
Yeah,
like
not
like
Everybody
I
has to
would
go
say
through the
almost the
trenches.
opposite.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not-
trenches
I'm not-
are the hard part.
The trenches are what it's. I guess trenches are what you would call paying your dues.
paying your dues.
And it's not really mean like a lack of progress. It just means it's the suck that everybody has to go through in order to get to where
Well,
you're at.
I'm talking about like
Nobody starts off.
times where you could be more, but yourself holds you back. When you
That's
could
definitely
be,
a thing.
Well, that's a thing,
all-
but
that's
that's
all
not
where I'm coming
necessarily
from.
what.
Right, I get where you guys are coming from. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
the position that you guys are coming from is definitely a part of the process. Like, you got to fucking grind your shit for sure. You got to hustle.
Yeah.
To me, it's like even if you are good, the trenches are. Even if you're fucking the best one in the room, you're gonna open for all these guys.
Yeah.
That's the trenches.
You're gonna have
trenches-
to sleep in your
you know what I
fucking
mean?
van.
The trenches to me are going on a 2.5 week long tour up
Yeah.
north and sleeping in your van
For
and
50
waking
bucks.
waking up every morning in 95-degree weather, dehydrated as fuck.
Right.
Yeah,
Those
that's
are the good
trenches.
trenches.
Yeah, that's
What you're
that's
saying
the
it-
trenches.
Well,
What
those-
you're saying
shitty-ass
is a
bar-
testament to
Those aren't really
self-confidence.
good. It's just part of what you got to
Right.
do.
You gotta play
like
in a
nobody
shitty bar.
wants to do that shit.
You got to
Yeah.
play in a shitty bar, bunch of fucking bikers. Fights break out.
You gotta
people
kiss an
boo-
ass cheek.
People booing you off stage. That
Well, biker shows are some of the best
Yeah,
shows I
they
you
really
have
are.
to you have to
I
walk
know.
so your band can run.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you got to be playing behind a fucking chicken wire. Because
Yeah.
people like to throw drinks and shit at you.
Yeah,
it's-
dude.
It's trenches.
Rawhide. No,
Stoney's
it's-
Bar,
The
Crawfordsville,
trenches
Indiana.
are. I mean, it's like that's what I call them because it's just something you got to do. It's the front lines. You got to push your way through, and you got to get to because you got to get your name out there. If you don't have a bunch of money backing you, that's the only way you can do it is going out there and grinding.
Yeah.
And,
Even Barry Manilow went through the
Bust-
fucking trenches, dude.
right.
You know what I mean?
The trenches could be something as simple as my technique is off, so I need to sit down and work out this technique that I've been doing wrong for all these years. And then
Totally.
there's, you're sleeping in a van eating a day-old McChicken because you have to save enough money to get to the next
that
show.
you didn't buy.
Yeah,
You found it,
I
actually.
don't know where it came from, but it was
look, a
like in
chicken
my
sandwich.
seat. It's
A
The reason we name our instruments is because we literally become affiliated with those instruments. Like they
Right.
become an appendage of ours. You know what I mean?
You
they're
like
our
snakes a lot
family
more than I
members.
thought you did,
My
Chris.
guitar's been my pillow, my blanket,
This
my
one's
fucking.
cool.
I've eaten a sandwich off my guitar.
I have.
It's pretty
I
great.
literally have, yeah.
No, but I mean, I always because those are the things that I think turn people away from music is because those are not easy. Paying your dues is not easy. It can get really repetitive. I've lost band members because of it.
I've thought about quitting.
Like I've lost band members that
do this right now.
I have too.
He's
Dude,
getting
I've
the
literally
snake on.
lost family. I've literally lost houses,
It's
jobs.
gonna sense my energy.
Like I have.
You're
man.
going to be just fine, Chris. You've been petting her forever now.
because
You're going to be just
ultimately
fine.
because of the trenches, man. Because of what it takes to get somewhere in this, I have lost everything.
Right.
Straight up. It's our cross to bear.
Yeah, it really is.
Brandon, I'm just letting you know if this thing bites me.
I also want to. I want to
She ain't
dissolve the
gonna bite you.
stipulation. I want to dissolve the stipulation that if somebody is invested in a musical career, that they can't be a good dad, that they can't be a good solid dude. Like they can. I love my kids and I love music.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You got to find a balance.
Yep.
And you got to bust your fucking ass.
Yeah.
My buddy Luke Hendrickson up in Minnesota, man, he's one of the
Just
hardest
forget
working
she's
dudes I've ever
there.
known, and he's on the road all the time, and he's a damn good dad. And a
There you
damn,
go.
damn good husband. He's
dads. You know, all y'all. that are
he's
dads.
just that's what he does for a living, and God bless his wife for letting him go out and do it. It's-
I want to thank my wife for letting me be here for I don't know how many fucking
Dude,
hours.
the
There you
hardest
go.
job in the music world is being a musician's wife.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
that
dude.
is no
they
shit.
take more shit than we do.
Kara Price.
Yeah.
Talk about trenches.
Can you
Yeah.
get this worm off of me?
What's her name again?
Get the snake
Wait,
off, Chris.
this
man.
snake's Stella.
Okay.
She's a ball python.
Oh, that's not the same one you had earlier.
She's stellar,
No.
but I don't want her on me.
Chris, I think you've been petting her long enough. You've been bonding with her a little bit. You'll be just fine, bud.
She's okay.
Listen, I don't want her sensing my adrenaline and then biting me.
She's not a horse. She's gonna sit there and she's gonna fucking.
Well, we
want
wanna
to
thank you guys
I'm honestly a
for
little
joining
bit
us for
scared.
another episode
Thank you so
of
much.
It's So Easy.
Hey.
It's so easy.
Before Chris pisses his pants, I don't know.
Our next episode, we will be at Rainwater Studios.
Heck yeah.
Lord willing.
yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's a
If
song.
the creek don't
It's going to be a
rise.
solid.
Yeah.
It's going to be a solid set.
That's what I was thinking.
There's no snakes at rainwater either.
Right.
Well, there's probably
No,
snakes, but you
unfortunately
turn the
not.
fuck out
I
of
tried
water.
to make it happen. I can't get them to do it.
Yeah. The snake guy's out of work that week.
But no,
Snake Factory.
just remember to keep at it. You know what I mean? Especially musicians. If you're not a musician and watching this podcast, fuck yeah. We need all the views and all the people and all the Patreons we can get. You know what I mean? So
Boobs are
we
good.
love you. We hope you have a great night, and we'll see you again here soon. It's so easy, baby.
It's so
On
easy.
three, everybody.
easy.
Oh, it's so easy.
How easy are you feeling with that python on your shoulder, Chris?
He's gonna beat your ass when the cameras get done.
Dude,
I'll tell you that.
Chris will
Yes.
tie me in
Y'all
a
have a good
fucking
night.
knot.
Yeah, Chris will climb all over your face like a fucking spider monkey.
Chris the space power.
I'm only 8 years
still
old, but I'll
something
beat your
wet
ass,
down-
Chip.
Did it musk on you?
Yeah.
Did this musk on
She's
you?
looking at you, dude.
Get that. Or a little.
I don't think a lot.
Friggin'.
We'll see.
Did you get peed on by the snake?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, dude. Freaking
Oh yeah. Here, Chris.
Chris got peed on.
I'm gonna take a shower.